A lot of parents are being told right now that kids should not have demands placed on them, especially our neurodivergent kids, that everything should be a choice, that we need to over-explain, we need to make sure we're always on the same page. And I get it, we're trying to avoid meltdowns, trying to make things easier for sure. But instead, we are creating a problem here, because you are not raising a child to just stay a child. You're raising a future adult. We don't want to just protect a permanent child. And freedom without responsibility actually hurts kids. It doesn't help them. I said this recently in a reel on Instagram, and what I said was that we're not raising babies. This kind of stirred some things up. We're not raising babies, we're raising future adults. Secure, stable, functioning adults don't come from lectures or endless choices. They come from structure, from boundaries, and from real responsibility. And I want to help you to get there, because it doesn't happen just all on its own, not with your neurodivergent. I'm going to reframe a myth here. The myth is that our kids, because of their stuff, their issues, they can't handle demands, that everything needs to be optional, and that if they resist, that we're doing harm, and responsibility is going to come naturally with age, or they're just never going to be able to function in that way. But responsibility, and this is the reality, responsibility is a skill. It's not a personality trait. Skills have to be taught, they have to be practiced, they have to be built with scaffolding, right? And avoiding responsibility does not protect them. It delays their development, and they're already delayed. So I'm not talking about pushing them further than they can be pushed, but working with them where they are, and keeping in mind that yes, them wanting freedom is normal, and also at the same time wanting to be coddled in it. Like, I want this freedom, but I don't want to have to do anything to get it. That is also natural. So knowing how to manage freedom is something that they have to learn, and that freedom and responsibility have to go together. If it's not, you are raising a tyrant, and that's not going to work. Many kids today are missing the give and take part of real life. So there's kids that are raised with privilege, and for a lot of kids that with privilege, these things are handled for them. A lot of the daily kind of things. They don't experience contribution or accountability. And then there's kids that that have trauma or emotional fragility, and those basic expectations can feel very overwhelming, not just for the child, for you as the parent. And they still need responsibility, but they're going to need it with strong support and scaffolding, not removing those expectations. And then you have neurodivergent kids that have executive functioning delays. And sometimes your trauma kids or your emotionally fragile kids are all in this together. And so the planning and the follow through and the impulse control doesn't develop automatically. And so you have to help teach that. You have to do your best while you have them in your home to help them to learn that. And it may take them longer. They are going to need that scaffolding and that support for longer periods of time because of the delays. But it doesn't mean that they can't still learn it. And on the flip side of that, teaching responsibility is not going to be learned through the school of hard knocks. And I meet a lot of parents, it's like, that's kind of the idea. It's like, well, they'll figure it out, or they'll even tell their kids, like, when you get a job, this is going to happen, or when real life hits you. And that's not very helpful. First of all, remember, with our kids, there's now and not now. And so they're not learning the skills for some future time. You have to teach the skills right now in this time so that they grow up with that. Otherwise, you're creating failure. We want to set them on the best path possible, with the best tools possible. What they do after that is going to be, that's where we probably need to talk about what's going to happen. But we know that it's not going to work without doing something in this area. Different kids are going to need different levels of support, but all kids do need responsibility paired with that freedom. So as they start to earn their freedom, there's going to be responsibilities that come with that. We don't just hand them everything. Hopefully, that's not what we want to do. I want to give you a couple of examples. So I was working with a family that could afford to have a housekeeper, some other extra help around the house, and this is totally fine. The kids were very involved in sports, and what we talked about in setting that up was that we didn't want the kids to not be responsible for any of the daily household basics. We wanted, even though there was this help, what were the basics that still they could be done? They need to know how to do the basics, and they need to be responsible for some of those basics. As your kids get older, those responsibilities are going to change. Yes, this is part of living here, is that you have a mom that takes care of you these things, and you have, they have a housekeeper, and they have, maybe people that are taking care of things outside. But at the same time, there's things that you can learn to take care of, such as your laundry or your bedroom or your bathroom. And these kids, with this parent, that these kids, they might not always have that kind of extra support. They are going to sometime go on their own too. They are going to have future roommates. They're going to have partners, hopefully. And if they haven't learned how to do these things, or haven't at least experienced, even if they act like they don't know how to do it the whole time they're in your home, you want them to have that experience of knowing that skill and knowing how to do it, and the building the habit of this is what we do. And everyone's going to thank you for that later. Responsibility is not punishment, it's preparation. Knowing how to clean and contribute and care for shared spaces is really part of emotional and social functioning. It's good for their brain. So I like to include it as part of this is what we do. It's not punishment. It's not a list that you have to do because these are your responsibilities, as much as it is this is how we operate as a family, and this is how systems operate. Everyone does their part, and everybody is. This other example, another client was an adult son that was living at home, and even though he was working, so he had his own money, he's blowing through his money like in a day or two, and then asking for more, and at the same time trying to set up goals with this family and what the future was going to hold for this young man who was neurodivergent, had some issues. He was demanding financial freedom. Like, he didn't understand why anybody's trying to control him. And at the same time, I saw this anger at people that have money, even his parents. Like, you don't understand because you always have enough money. Or just being angry at his boss because his boss, has more money than him. Things like that. And I've seen this trend of like people being angry at people that have, rather than looking at like what it took to get there, or isn't that, like, just because you don't have that doesn't mean that somebody else doesn't have the right to have it. So there's no understanding that I saw in this exchange of like planning and saving and paying bills or delayed gratification. And that was the things that we have to work on with this family. And a lot of times when you have kids like that don't have impulse control, that cannot handle delayed gratification, but they just want to be able to do whatever they want, especially as they get older, you have to set it up. You have to define it, and you have to set it up so that those things happen, even if it's not necessary. even if you don't need him to pay rent to make it work or pay for his own food or things like that. You have to set up those responsibilities, because freedom without responsibility doesn't create independence. It actually creates resentment, and it doesn't actually fully give us our autonomy when we're living like that. And so then there's this tension, right? And you are going to want to set up those boundaries. You're going to want to say to your kids, that freedom and responsibility have to grow together. And I think this is a really important conversation with teens, that they do go together, even if you can handle it, even if you have the financial means to, give them their own car and pay the insurance and pay the gas. And, I see a lot of parents justify it because, well, they run some errands for me too. It's like, come on, let's be really realistic about what this looks like. I remember when I was doing equine therapy a lot at my ranch, I always had the families and the kids that would come out, we always did a chore first. Anytime before they got to do something with the horses, we did some kind of caretaking thing first, because I think it's really important to realize that if you're going to own a horse, you're going to work with the horse, like there's a lot of work. There's money that goes in here. So we would work, and then we would play and have fun. And there was a lot of therapeutic reasons why I wanted the families to do that as well, but it's just healthy. So in real life, it's very clear. And so we can pair that and make that possible for our kids. If they're going to use the car, then they pay for gas. You can decide how much that's going to be, or you can, you get to set that up, or that's the rule. They have to put a minimum amount of gas in the vehicle, or they can pay for the insurance or contribute to it. If they have a phone, are they paying for that? Or is it just like, I've seen kids treat computers and phones like so terrible, like throwing them down, like, for most of us, this is like $1,000 piece of equipment, and they're, they don't have any sense of that. So making them, pay for part of that. If you're gonna have a phone, then there's responsibilities with it. And part of that may be the controls that you put on it. And being okay that if that is not met, that it isn't their right to have a phone. It isn't their right to use a car. It isn't their like they have to have that. If they don't have the money for gas because they spent it all on fast food, that's fine. They don't have to go. They really don't have to go. And if it's for work, then you might have to give them a ride, or you might have, you have to figure out how you're going to set that up, like what happens in real life, and start showing them the cause and effect of that. Otherwise, they don't learn it. They have to learn it through these experiences. And I like those experiences to happen in the safety of your home as much as you can, before they have to go experience that in the world. And you don't know how much your kids are going to be able to do, especially your kids that you're worried about that are delayed and unable to do so many things at the level that other people are doing it. So you want to really set these things up, that living in the home as an adult, that they are going to contribute financially as well as take care of things in the home. Not just they do these chores around the house. It's like, no, they're living there. Most kids are living with their parents because they're saving money. They're not saving money if they're just spending it all on something else. So make sure you're really clear about those boundaries. Household chores are not optional, and they're not paid. It's part of the system. Like, this is what we do, and this is how we take care of it. And I have a whole bunch of help to give you if you're fighting with kids about chores and they're not adults. Then that's a good enough reason to want to get some coaching on that, because there are a lot of things we can do to help that do help their executive functioning with that. They want flexibility, but they have to show reliability first. Privileges are built on demonstrated responsibility, not on negotiations. So Many kids cannot plan their way to responsibility. That's executive functioning. It's not defiance, it's executive functioning issues. So we have to teach them through visual reminders, through routines, clear expectations, consistent follow through. If this happens, this happens. Scaffolding is not removing responsibility, it's supporting kids while they practice it. And in that, getting those little bits of freedoms, the things that they really want to be able to do. Like, I'm sure that your early teens are looking forward to when they can drive, when they can go out with their friends without adult supervision. All of those things, we keep that scaffolding there until they can show us that they can handle that responsibility. I have a lot of parents that have to pull back on how much freedoms they've allowed because our kids are shouting at us that they can't handle the responsibility, the freedom, because they don't have a sense of responsibility. So, in closing, I just want to say that if your child really wants freedom but resists responsibility, it doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. You're exactly where you need to be, because this is where your leadership is going to matter the most. Kids don't need fewer expectations. They need fewer of the unclear, like, I just thought that they would get this, or I don't understand why they don't know this by now, or they knew how to do it when they were 11, but now that their brain has gone haywire, they can't. They need clear structure and steady adults and real responsibilities that are paired with support, even as they're growing up, and even young kids, and even kids that are neurodivergent. This is how confidence is built. This is how freedom becomes sustainable. If this feels really hard to you, you're not alone, and you don't have to figure this out by yourself. I welcome you to get a hold of me. Go to parentingchallengingkids.com, set up a call. I'm happy to talk to you about this. Thank you.